Hello, hello,
Oh,
hello. Greetings, or greetings.
you chose the short
Welcome.
science intro. My
I did.
goodness.
Did you think you had? Well, I was looking at it and I'm thinking, oh, what's going to relate to this chat? And I'm thinking, science. We'll do that one. So, welcome, Bernie, and welcome, Lucas, from the LC King YouTube channel. How are you?
Hi. Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. We've actually, I think I first asked you for an interview about probably 2 years ago, and we've only just got it together. So all in due time. Don't rush these things.
And the universe unfolds exactly how it's supposed to. And now we are here and ready for this.
Yeah, exactly. So,
And hello, everyone in chat. I won't go through all your names. I'll put them up on screen. Thank you all for being here. And we're going to jump in. Today we're going to talk about the realm we live in and a bit about electricity, those gods of the elect. Actually, I was thinking about the word elect the other day. That's what they use, in ancient scripture and stuff, don't they? The elect were the sort of chosen ones, right? And now what do? We go and elect people to be the chosen ones of power. That's just crazy.
Sure do. There's Callum. Hi, Callum.
So, Callum's here. Hello, Callum. Everyone else, thank you all for being here. All right, so let's just jump straight into it then, hey? We'll get this show on the road.
I can present if you like.
Where do we want to start here, Lucas? Yeah, do you want to present? Tell us what is this place? What's going on here?
Oh, I can only. So I'm going to be a little bit rusty with this electric flat Earth stuff. Yeah, all the basic premise of what I've done is basically got a battery and applied it to the flat Earth cosmology, and that was the starting point. And then I've tried to fill in all the blanks since then, and so that's basically how this process unfolded. And there was just there was tons of information that kept flowing out of it once you got that sort of basic premise underway, and it was really good. But I'll get this slideshow up, and that will help me sort of remember, because I haven't really been focused on the electric flat Earth for quite a while now, so this is going to be a refresher for me.
And it's interesting because until we got the flat Earth model, all these kind of thoughts and stuff couldn't really happen, could they? If the sun was out 90 million miles away and we were spinning through space chasing it, it's a completely different model to two polarities, energies circling, orbiting around a stationary plane, isn't it? It's a completely, and from that, then you can kind of get the anode, cathode, the power source, all that kind of stuff comes out of that, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and it connects basically the technology that we have now to how the world operates. So you can actually find parallels in, and that was the big thing. It's like I can parallel what I'm talking about with, something like electrolysis or a battery or vacuum tubes or something realistic, and I can show that these are actually, very in alignment with each other.
Well, I think in the end, that's all technology is, right? It's just replicating what's already here.
Yeah. Well, what has to be in nature. Whatever we do has to be in nature. So I started out looking at some of this stuff, and the first thing that sort of clued me into the electric sort of part of this was actually looking at a generator. And there's a wiring diagram wiring in a generator, 3-phase generator, that is called a star coil. And you can overlay that to the zodiac and it fits quite nicely, even to the extent of producing the different elements and how they move around the zodiac as well. So they'll have, Earth, the polarities in that sort of way. So yeah, I just found that was a really intriguing link, and that sort of set my brain ticking. And I wasn't really looking for a model at the start. I was looking to work out what the zodiac was and try and understand it. I was like, here's like a cryptic thing that
Okay.
I can unravel, and it was like a puzzle for me. And
Yeah.
so in the zodiac, it has a list of planets, and they have a list of metals that are associated with them. And when I looked at them, so the sun is gold, moon is silver, Mercury's mercury, and those sort of things. And the list goes down to lead, which is Saturn. What I know, I basically said, well, why are they actually metals, for one? And then, why are they in this order? And so I basically got on Google and searched it. I said, well, why? Look at these metal listings. And then I've basically found one that had this the same sort of layout, or the same progression that was in the zodiac. And I thought, oh, well, that's really interesting, that they've put them in some sort of order. And it relates to what's called a galvanic series. And this is, you put two different metals in a battery sort of setup, or a galvanic cell, and you're going to see which one acts as the anode and which one acts as the cathode.
Sorry, Luke, to interrupt. Is it just, are you able to zoom in a little bit at all on what you have? There we go. Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Hugely interesting to me as an alchemist as well, what you're talking about right now. I'll let you continue and then bring up some amazing things I've discovered with the metals and the heavenly bodies.
Sweet. Yeah, so basically you've got a range. These metals that were depicted in the zodiac were a range from anode to cathode. So most anodic to most cathodic, and the sun, being gold, was the most cathodic metal. And so at this stage, I didn't even know what a galvanic cell. It means that it acts as
the cathode's the part that wears away.
The anode's what wears away. The cathode.
The anode wears away. The cathode
actually can grab mass.
100%.
Okay.
It's reversed in electrolysis. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. There's a little funny thing. It's really it's a bit of a trick, but it's there on purpose, that you have electrolysis and you have a battery. One puts out energy, and one you're putting in energy. So the polarities flip, and that's why it's a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, in electrolysis, these two would flip, and one would be positive, one would be negative. So, and at this stage, when I was looking at this, I didn't even know what a galvanic cell was. I knew what a battery was, but I didn't know like these terminology for it. So I started looking into it, and I'd been on holidays. I'm coming across on the Spirit of Tasmania, sitting on a big boat, and I'm looking into the galvanic series and the galvanic cell. And when I started putting this into the sort of sun, these 4 element type things that's in the zodiac as well, because it has the 4 elements, which is basically earth, water, air, and fire. Right, it has those 4 elements that are embedded into the zodiac. So the sun is related to fire, and those sort of things. Earth is earth, and those sort of things as well. So what I did was started putting the galvanic cell into the 4 elements. And as I was sitting on this ship, I just noticed that the ocean's all around me, and I'm reading about electrolytes, and it was basically salt water. And I'm like, oh, holy shit,
Salt.
the very thing that's needed to create a battery is this electrolyte, and I'm sitting on it. From everywhere I could see was ocean. I'm like, yeah, okay. It sort of hit home a little bit more real. So there's the anode progression. Just a disclaimer, of course, this is just a model. I think there's a lot to be said about it. A lot of, just presenting what I've found. So, So let's get into the basic premise here. You got the toroidal field, you got the inertial plane there, or the this would be like the positive and the negative of a magnet, and then you've got this center tree, basically the center pillar, and then the sun and the moon are both equal in size, moving around each other. I think there's a lot. It goes down a lot deeper than what we're actually told as well. So I think it's more to this toroidal sort of field, if you like, and a closed system. Obviously, within this enclosed system, we have a bunch of different sort of, they're just polarities really at play. And once you start to put it into place, then you'll see that these pressures and all these different things start coming in. And so, when you have looking at the anode and cathode as the sun and the moon, then you're getting changes in temperature, changes in resistance, voltage. One's to do with heat, one's to do with cold. And this also has an effect on different salts, different charge potentials, pressure potentials, and all those sort of things are at play. So this also relates to our downward neutral. In a sense, just again, it's basically polarity at play again, where you have a positive material and a negative material that come together and they basically become neutral. And so this is where your density and buoyancy all come into play because of neutrality. So I'll just briefly go over these and just to set it up, and then we'll go into more of the galvanic cell and how it applies. So the galvanic cell is a fairly simple setup. It basically has you could split it down the mirror. It's like a mirror. So one is the positive side, one is the negative side. You'll have two different metals, and you'll have two different electrolytes, and they are able to move through this permeable bridge or a porous membrane. And so that porous membrane is what actually limits the battery from going to equilibrium really quickly and losing all potential charge. So when you start to put this galvanic cell into our world, what actually happens is you have the four components again. You have the salt bridge, or that permeable membrane, which is the earth. And then you have the electrolytes, which is the oceans. And then you have an anode, which is the moon, and the cathode, which is the sun. And so that is the basic four-element structure of it. And from there, you can add multiple batteries into it. It's not just one. There's multiple layers to this, and they sort of overlap on each other. So this is basic structure of a battery, but it's also can be applied to our world in that way. So earth, water, air, and fire. Next, which was really interesting to me when I was researching this, is that within the galvanic cell, they have sulfates, salt, and you join them together with water and you get electrolyte or water. Okay, so in the alchemical model as well, they'll have the four elements, and then they'll have the three substances. And so you have sulfur, salt, and mercury, and they are the three main chemicals, if you like, that you need to get the the battery working. So Mercury in this case is more like a water, and rather than the metal. We can talk about the metal later, but it's interesting. They sort of cross over because of some of the attributes. But Mercury in this case is more to do with an electrolyte, and you have the same principle, or mercury, if you like, electrolytes in your spinal cord, in your cerebrum, in your cells, where you have, potassium and, your salts and your potassiums working to create charge in your body. So this is not just applicable to, say, the world or a battery or whatever, but it's actually applicable to our physiology, which is an important aspect, I think, because it helps make the whole thing a bit more valid. So the basic idea is this: there is a circulating energy, if you like, and it really is driven by the sun, but it's fed by the moon, which is, there's no independent sort of mechanism here. There's nothing just sitting there doing its own thing. It's all linked. And that's something that's I found really amazing with this, is that it turns into a holistic view rather than saying, well, the sun's there or the moon's there doing its own thing. No, they're working together, in their own way, doing different things and those two polarities have really certain different jobs. So one of the biggest problems with Yep.
Sorry, I was just going to say, is the moon drawing energy and then feeding the sun? Because we know that moonlight's cold, right? It's like it's taking stuff out of the atmosphere, and then the sun's like it's giving it back. Because you were talking before about the electrolysis, right? You've got an input and an output.
Yep. Yeah. So that's right. So the moon is giving to the sun in this model, because that's what the anode does.
That can go
the
into
circuit goes one way.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have like our phases of the moon, where it literally wears away, right, over a month.
Yeah, and that's to do with sort of where it positions. There's a lot going on in terms of positions as well that make those sort of things happen. And there is also atmospheric electrolysis, which I'll get into as well, which is pretty interesting, of how the planets can be created via electrolysis. Just energy moving by itself, and that actually refines metals. But the biggest problem I had right at the start of this was like, well, if you look back here, the anode and cathode are actually in the electrolyte. So you need that electrolyte to create the transfer between the two, right? So, well, we don't see that in our world. That's sort of like, I was like, oh, that's a big problem. So I basically came across this guy called George S. Piggott, and he was levitating metal balls using high voltage. So he'd created his own static machine and whatnot. But he was looking for interplanetary communication, a way of communicating. And within this article, it had, and this was in the 1900 sometime, but he was going on about all the different effects, and he was basically studying these balls as they were levitating. And he noticed things like if you heat it up, it would have a different oscillation, and those sort of things would occur. And so it sort of had this one-to-one match between the metal planets, or explained in a way how the metal planets could be up there and levitating. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. There's more to it. There's more methods of levitation than this that are at play, but yeah, there's about 3 or 4.
When you say metal planets, what do you mean? That's just what, because you don't mean the metal spheres, do you? Like,
Yeah, that's
what
what I
are we
mean.
talking frequency here, or that you mean they're
No, I
metal
think they're metal.
spheres?
Yeah, physical.
The planets.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you think they're actual metal?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Wow.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's a okay. So
And
the model can't really work unless you have some sort of physicality to it, and there's a good reason why. Because if you have a plasma or something like that, it's not going to just sit in the one spot and do this repetition movement. He's going to want to return to equilibrium at some point. So it's just the nature of energy. You have to have something that it wants to adhere to. And you'll see that, like, if you look for somewhere where they're trying to create plasma, say just in the air with nothing, they've always got some sort of input for one, and they've always got metal involved in some fashion. And there's a reason why this is easily produced via electrolysis, and it's all in the oceans anyway. It's getting lifted up. These elementals are getting lifted up out of the oceans by the heat of the sun. So it's not like they're getting it from somewhere, and that's actually getting refined via a decent process. And then there's just energy or voltage that is actually able to levitate, as well as a few other things at play that help with this process.
So you've obviously seen the like Nikon P1000 close-ups of planets and stuff. What do you think we're looking at there? Have you seen those?
So I have to interject on that one first off, and that is a straight up artifact problem caused by digital zoom and the digital like interference, where when you look through like an analog application or like a telescope, and actually like I've got a pretty giant telescope myself that I built as a child with my dad. You never have that issue of it looking like that, and when you actually are able to focus in on the planets, you will see what they are imaged as, or what they claim they look like, as opposed to what they turn out on these digital camera zooms.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can show you some. I think I've got a picture in here where it shows metal and the oxidizing effect on metal, and you'll see it's very similar to the moon. Except you can't really tell the difference. I don't know if I've got
like
it.
The
there we go. There you go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's oxidization. And then you've got other things like so basically there's the pitting and this sort of white and the darkness. They come from sulfates and exactly what you see when the anode breaks down in an air sort of environment, a cold, dry environment, different from being in the wet. But so yeah, I put that in because it is a sticking topic for a lot of people, because it's sort of like I don't know, it sort of reverts back to the old model that they've been tried to get away from it. Yeah, I know, and it sort of it upsets everyone. But at the same time, you sort of can't have, if you want to have an energetic model or a battery model, you've got to have an anode and a cathode, unless you can find a battery that sort of doesn't use those things. You're gonna, but there isn't any.
So, yeah. And so the planets are created as part of this process, as part of the galvanic cell, basically, and they're kept in orbits through fields, magnetic fields, I'm guessing, something like that.
Yeah, well, it's I tend to think that we're in a closed system. So when you have basically an electric field, obviously magnetic fields, but then you have the structure or the enclosed system, I think it's solid oxygen or solid air. And the simple process is like,
Okay.
how do you create a dome or an enclosed system without actually, building some sort of scaffold?
That's
and
what you've seen sky ice, yeah?
Yeah,
Proper sky ice.
I think there's a bit of a red
They've
herring
looked into that,
involved
and
in
they
that.
say it's just. They could be, but they do say it's just oxygen, and they're not sure how it forms a solid thing. But there's nothing in there but oxygen.
Yeah. So, basically, when you get the temperatures down low enough, the air turns into a solid paramagnetic, this crystallized structure, and what's super interesting about it is like it's a superconductor for one, so it's reflective of every energy that comes in. So it's almost like a pure shell, pure reflection, and it's got that crystallized structure. It's got all these properties that make it really interesting, but it also is able to levitate metals, and they just go around and loop, and they never stop because there's no friction. I don't know if you ever seen the videos. I'll have to send them to you. I haven't got them
I
here,
would
but
absolutely love to see that.
yeah,
Like,
they get.
I'm loving every bit of your presentation so far. It's like so much connected into my alchemy, which is electrolysis that I do.
I saw
I'm listening to everything you're saying. If I'm not in front of the camera necessarily, it's because I'm setting up a couple things behind the scenes to show once you're done. So please
Sweet.
continue.
You had to show your own electrolysis, didn't you, Bert? Ran off, got another camera.
So the other battery that's involved is just a little bit different, and this is called a thermogalvanic battery, and it's just a different. The difference in it is that it only needs one type of electrolyte. It doesn't need a salt bridge, and all you need is a heat differential. And so you say, well, even if the moon isn't as cold as what they say, or it's not, shooting out ice, but it's just got to have a difference between the moon and the sun, and you're going to get an energy transfer as long as there's able to be an electric current moving across that space between it. So it's fairly simple. You will have that's anode and cathode. Again, you're going to have a transfer of energy. So that is sort of two. That's two on top of each other. So you have the galvanic and the thermogalvanic at play. You also have the flow battery. We might get into that later, but you basically at the hot side or the sun side, you've got an exothermic reaction happening, and you've got an endothermic reaction happening at the cold side. This is to do with
that's how it's working without the electrolyte is heat, basically heat differential.
Yeah, it still needs a communication through there, and the electrolyte comes basically from the heat of the sun. It's like a. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. So the basic communication.
That would mean that evaporation is not what they told us either, right? The whole evaporation cycle that we see, in school, of the water going up in clouds and coming down. I guess that's
some of it's right, some of it's
true.
Yeah, they're not talking. Yeah, they're not including what's going up higher up. So obviously we need a transfer, and I've found something that was perfect example of this is vacuum tubes. So vacuum tubes are, you'll have a.
Sorry, do you mind zooming in on that a little bit?
Which one?
Thanks.
Oh, sorry, I went to the wrong one.
That was the one. On the left side there. Perfect. You're amazing.
So the a vacuum tube is similar to a light bulb for people that don't know, but instead of having a wire between it, you have the anode and cathode are separated, and usually you'll have a little grate or something between it, but it's all enclosed and it's in a low pressure system.
Kind of like a neon
That's not
tube, like a
Huh?
neon light more.
Yeah,
More
exactly
like a neon
that.
light.
Yep. So in that you'll have a gas, and it's usually doped with something, could be salts or whatever. And don't let the vacuum fool you. It's just low pressure. That's all it is. And they're used in old guitar amps, and they were used instead of what was it? Basically, your little switches. So that's your basic principle that's at play between the sun and the moon. Is you have a transference of electricity or energy from the moon to the sun, and it's exactly like a vacuum tube. So it's, if you want to look at that, people want to look at that, they can. So as when you overlay this battery, you basically have the cathode as the positive terminal, hydrogen production, because that's what the positive terminal does. It will produce hydrogen. It's exothermic, high current, high resistance, acidic, accumulator. So it accumulates energy. Gold, it's most notable. Plasma surface. Plasma is still involved, but you need metal to create plasma. So we'll get to why sunlight's color it is. Negative terminal, oxygen production, endothermic, high voltage, low resistance, alkaline, transferee. It is silver, second most notable, and it has more like ionic winds rather than a plasma. The water, this is as above, so below type stuff, where you have an upper atmospheric electrolyte and a lower electrolyte, and one's in an aerated medium and one's in a liquid sort of medium. So we can have a look at some of the stuff that's in salt water. Not only is it sort of like a good for your sort of own blood, but it has chlorides, it has the sodiums, it has the sulfates, magnesium, calcium, and potassiums. These are the main ones for the battery that are in there. The chloride, sulfur. It's also got gold in it. It's also got silver. It's got tons of stuff. So there's plenty of stuff going on below.
Do clouds come into this process? No, I'm not sure.
I think clouds are like a plasma monoatomic. I'll cover that a little bit at the end too, when going over my aspects.
Oh, okay. So maybe they're produced. Yeah, okay. Like when you did that experiment, you got all that stuff being just popped the ether into your jar. Yeah, right.
I thought they were more like a salt. And I knew that when they add sulfates to the clouds, that will start to generate rain. So there is some sort of, galvanic type process going on in there, electrochemical process. Anyway, I just popped this into my presentation because I think it's really interesting to correlate some of this stuff with the body, and then that makes it really interesting. So this guy, I won't speak too much on it, but Rene Quinton, he was healing people with the use of seawater, and basically he would go down and he would get a certain type of seawater. Was like 30 feet down, and he was just making sure it was basically clean, and he was able to basically put it straight into people's veins, and they were healing from it. So the electrolytes or the salts and things that are needed for your body can be directly pulled from the ocean. So I just found this really interesting. You can do more reading on it for people that are interested. But
Wow.
people still
So we
use
don't
it
need
today.
blood
Like,
banks.
no, you don't need them. No, you just need ocean water.
No.
And he does.
Wow.
It wasn't like straight ocean water. Obviously, you have to get it in. It's a diluted form of it. But
Mm.
this shows the connection, because our body is electrochemical as well. The heart produces a voltage, as we know, and it's my theory that we have two different types of blood, in a sense. One's oxygenated, one's not, and they have your arterial and your venous or Aries and Venus blood.
The red blue ship,
yeah.
Right? Mm.
Yeah, and when those two come together, you see it in the flow battery. That when those two come together, that's how you get a voltage. And so the heart acts like the earth, like the membrane between it.
Okay. Oh, okay. So okay. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
almost
why
like
heart
is
is
different polarities, like the oxygenated. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And there's actually a battery that people should check out that it breathes, it runs on oxygen, and so the same sort of thing. So these can be correlated. It's crazy. Yeah, no, yeah, basically. But it's that's why there's like that anagram for earth and heart, because they're like salt bridges between the two polarities. Yeah. So
the same thing. Okay.
Yeah, both do the same thing. And there is sort of this pumping action that goes on with the thermohaline circulation. Really interesting how when the sun moves over the ocean, it actually heats up the waters expand and bring up the salts into it, because that heated water can hold more salt than the cold water. And so it does this cyclic movement. It's churning the salts at the same time it's moving around. So the haline, this cycle is really interesting, because it seems to have this differentiation between the internal and external, and a movement between the internal and external, and I think there's two different types of salts going on there too, which would be related to the potassium nitrates and the sodium chlorides. So the upper electrolytic gas is sort of recognized as the ionosphere, and they do recognize like a global circuit, they call it, and those sort of things. But yeah, they sort of say there's a sodium layer and those sort of things. Yeah.
And the oceans move almost like our blood, like some of them are like, it polarizes itself, basically. We've got two circuits going.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's because of I think it's this heat and cold and heat differential type stuff happening again, you know?
Yeah, cool. All right, quickly, I want to say a big thank you to Andrew, Dick, and New West Reset for your support. We appreciate it very much, Lee.
Oh, that's better. Sorry.
Oh, there we go.
I didn't do that. Wow, sorry.
We figured it out. Sorry.
That's halfway through.
Now we're rocking.
Yeah, so this one I relate to.
Now start again.
Right?
Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, so this one I relate to the atmospheric atmospheric flow battery, and basically I relate this to the heart as well. So this is what we're talking about. You have tank 1 and tank 2. One's a blue, one's a red. And then you have this membrane between, and this is where you get the voltage from, the two tanks. So I think there's a similar thing going on here with the sun and the moon, where you have one red, one blue polarity again. Oh, I did a picture for it. There you go. Boom.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And that, okay,
so
venous capillaries, nice.
Yeah, the capillaries seem to have the same sort of thing going on as well. It's a replication. Earth capacitor. So in a galvanic cell, the earth, in the salt bridge acts, like I said, like a capacitor in a sense. It's holding charge and it's keeping the equilibrium between the two polarities. So in this sense, I think the Earth is acting as like a sink of energy as well. It's holding charge. There's also this movement. You need sort of like a movement of ion exchange through the salt bridge. And so this is what I think a lot of these groundwaters and aquifers and that's about, is actually this penetration of basically oceanic waters, but it's accumulating. And the other thing with the salt bridge is it basically brings together positive and negative. And when you have that, you're locking these elements together in a sense. And so they accumulate. You have another side to the Earth salt bridge, and that is molten salt or magma. And this is another type of battery, which is a molten salt battery that holds charge as well. Really powerful. They basically can store a lot of energy for a long time, and then all you have to do is heat them up, and they're off, and they're producing again. And so this is what seems to be going on within. There's a lot of high current sort of transfer between these positive and negative ions transferring, and then you have this molten salt. So how many batteries are we up to? About 5 batteries so far? I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And then we have the stratification type stuff, which is basically when you have this different layers of Earth that go down. It's like this one's just, I'm not 100% on this at all, but it seems reasonable enough that you have these layers of different plates and different metals or different contents of Earth, and they'll start holding a charge as well. So that's basically a voltaic pile, very simple battery.
Yeah.
The growth of the salt bridge or Earth is called electrocrystallization, and it refers to basically crystal growth using electrodes and electrochemical type processes. So I'll flick through these. We don't want to go on too long, do we? There's telluric currents. People can read up on telluric current induction in the Earth for telephone wires and those sort of things, how they transfer through the Earth. This relates to electroculture. If people aren't familiar with what that is, it's using electricity to actually increase crop growth. There's been a fair few tests on it and things like that. And so there's one in particular that I liked where he basically had wires in the ground and then wires above his crop, and he would do the polarity thing. So he'd basically have one positive and one negative, and he was getting good crop results, and then he'd flip the polarity and do all sorts of different things and upset things. So I just found that interesting. So it may relate, there might be a correlation with that sort of setup and how the sun and the moon both affect us, or plants and animals and cycles. So this is your states of matter, basic states of matter: solid, liquid, gas, plasma. We won't worry about that too much. And this is your world distillation. This is what I was talking about earlier. How the sun heats the oceans, and the world winds just keep moving all that, circulating it around with pressure differential, and then you're creating basically an atmospheric electrolyte from that process. And this is really interesting because it does relate extremely well to alchemy and what they were trying to do with the great work, in a sense, because they're applying heat to a substance and then they're cooling it down, and they're copying the world process in a sense, and being involved in it. And I think that's really interesting, that the alchemical side of this enclosed system. Obviously, world winds play a huge role in moving atmospheric elements and evening out the electrolyte. So this is one of the charts that a lot of alchemists know. This is your basic setup, where you will have celestial salt and celestial niter. Celestial niter is more to the moon side or nitrates, and then the sun side is more to your chlorides. So it all fits in a battery sort of thing. Again, it's very interesting how it did that. So this is, if I was using a silver anode and a gold cathode, how the process would actually occur, or the actual chemicals you would need to actually make a battery with those two metals. And it's really, you need to be able to produce nitric acid and hydrochloric acid. And you produce hydrochloric acid with sodium chloride and sulfuric acid. And that'll produce that, and then sulfuric acid and potassium nitrate, and that'll create your nitric acids. And interestingly enough, when you join those two, you get aqua regia, which is royal water, and that's able to break down gold or interact with gold in the right way. How does some of these elements get there into the atmosphere? They get there via volcanoes. Via the sulfates. There's huge amounts of sulfates going up into the atmosphere via volcanoes. There's also mercury going up into the atmosphere via volcanoes, huge amounts. And it's not just like land one, it's sea ones as well. So the sulfur in a plasma state, that'll actually create the same spectrum as sunlight. So everyone's gone. I'll keep going. So as before, the difference between the galvanic cell and the electrolysis is energy in and energy out. So I think those two things are occurring because you're in a closed system, so you have to have both operating at the same time. We spoke about that. The reason the mercury kept coming up for me as a sort of a sticking point, because it was all in it turns up everywhere.
I'm still going because I didn't realize Cambell stepped up for a minute.
Yeah.
But I'm here, and yes, do continue. It's amazing stuff you're doing.
So mercury is one of those things that is just so, when you start looking at the metal itself, it's just so interesting because of all its properties. And the main thing it's able to do, which is interesting, is amalgamate metals. And people aren't really sure of what that process is, because they don't really think it's a chemical reaction as such. It's just pulling metals in. It's really cool to go and have a look at how mercury does that to gold and silver and all these other metals. Right. It has a real
dissolves them kind of like water dissolves minerals and elements.
Yeah, exactly. So it's got this sort of, this why I was sort of putting it in reference to our electrolytes as well. So it has this sort of correspondence there, like it's like another level up, if you know what I mean.
I feel exactly what you're saying right there. Have had the same thoughts and ponderances on it for years.
Yeah, it's like a different sort of dimension of water in a sense. So it has a high surface temperature and it's liquid at room temperature. So these make it perfect for basically getting into a gaseous state and getting up into the atmosphere via the volcanoes. Now, why is it? It's also one of its interesting things it does is used in old mercury arc valve reactors. Now, it's really good at catching signals. Obviously, Mercury's amazing at catching signals, but it's also able to transfer alternating current, AC current, into DC current. So that's a really interesting property that it's able
Mercury
to do.
Right, as well as it doesn't break down or erode. It keeps replicating itself in this plasma arc state. It's very, very fascinating.
Yeah, so, it's eternal.
I mean, do you know of Paul Cook? He I think he was in Malta, and he found one of these in an old movie theater.
Yep,
like a Mercury arc rectifier. Yeah, because they were using it for power and stuff. Or something, light projection. Don't know. Yeah,
so that was really interesting to me, because the whole system seems to be built for DC rather than AC. So that's another special property
and at
of
the moment
Mercury.
We're on AC, aren't we? We're on alternating.
Yeah, we're on AC. Yeah. I think there's something dodgy going on there. Yeah. So the other thing is that they done an experiment where they would have like two poles, so positive and negative, and they put Mercury in it was like a maze. And it was able to find its way through the maze to get to the positive end, because it has a tendency to move towards the cathode.
Wow.
And I just thought, that's really interesting. It's actually able to navigate around, which is just a really fascinating property on its own. So I read some pretty interesting articles. The other one that's really important is that you're able to grow silver on Mercury in nitrates. And you're able to, and they have transferred Mercury into gold via high voltage. So those two things.
You just figured out the old chemical secret nearly. I mean,
yeah,
because we talk about Mercury a lot, right? And these Mercury balls and stuff that we see
too.
Yeah, it transmutates.
It's because it can turn AC into DC. Would AC be what you would be picking up from like etheric energy if you were like drawing
other from way around? DC is what you'd be picking up.
Drawing DC, would you?
Yeah, DC is what everything
so I'm just trying to work what the Mercury's doing, but I've always thought it was more of an amplifier or like a signal rectifier, if you want to put it that way, to sort of tune in the signal. But
yeah, well, it does that too. It does. It has all these properties to it that is just outstanding. But yeah, and that's why I think there's a process going on. Yeah, well, that's one. But I think there's a process going on that it's when it goes up into the atmosphere, it's actually accumulating metals. In a sense, it's pulling metals towards itself. It's got a high surface tension, so it's a spherical in nature. And it's also, then you've got the other processes of electrolysis that are actually going to start refining it. And then you've got the salts that are up there where crystals can grow and all these sort of things. But in general, once you add mercury to it, it gives another secondary layer of how metals can actually form up there, which is, I just find really fascinating. Of course, it's just a model, but, you know.
Because mercury is the only metal that makes amalgams, right? That'll literally eat another metal and like combine with it.
Yeah, exactly.
At room temperature, yes.
So, yeah. The boundary, the air dome, I think this is...
So does that look like the old world was DC then?
Correct.
Is that what you're coming out of that? Like it was a DC that was being given out as the energy source? Because we're told that, you know, DC, right? That's the devil. You know, you touch it and you get electrocuted and die pretty much. That's what the whole Edison, you know, Tesla thing was about, right? And they're electrocuting the elephants and all this kind of stuff.
I think that Well, this is obviously getting an AC into it. It has to get an AC because you're rectifying it. So it's being used to, say, charge a, whatever the electric vehicles or do something in DC. So it has to be deriving the energy as AC. But to your sort of point, I do think that they have obfuscated how far they can actually push DC through telephone or the power poles and those sort of things. I think they can go much further and much more efficient than
that was
being told.
That was the big controversy, wasn't it? Is Westinghouse Edison was going to have to build like stations every couple of kilometers or whatever to get his power grid up.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's what they were saying. But I've read articles where it's not that in that case either. So I don't know. It's all dodgy.
And
it's
so
all dodgy when you go back.
Very dodgy. I agree.
With these rectifiers, are they being fed power or are they drawing power? Like, are they their own power source and then feeding, or are they part of like a grid that's being fed in and then they're rectifying the power and feeding a machine?
Yeah, they're getting energy. And then they're rectifying that energy into DC, so we're usable for a different application. So I don't know how old these actually are. Like, they might not be as old as what we're told, but they're, they are interesting and they're just fascinating.
We've got photos of them. We've got photos of them charging electric cars back in the 20s, I think. 100 years ago, not that long ago, but it's interesting stuff, isn't it? I mean, the more we get into this, it's like the world that, just 100 years ago was completely different to what they tell us. These have got mercury bloody rectifiers and stuff, and we're told everyone's just living in the mud in a buggy, in a buck hut.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, they had an understanding. I mean, those even the valve tubes and all those sort of things are pretty amazing the way they created them. So I think we're nearly at the end here.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Have you heard of red mercury? And does that? Oh, sorry, is my sound low? Someone said my sound. Sorry. Red mercury. Have you seen that? Where there's videos that show that it is repelled by garlic and attracted to gold. Is that correct, or is it? Yeah, that's right. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know. I think it seems like I think it's like dodgy.
Yeah, right.
It's got the mirror tricks and shit.
Vampire, man.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, the attracted to gold. I mean, I don't know what the properties of red mercury are, but mercury would be attracted to gold, wouldn't it? Because it would try and eat it. Is that right?
Yeah, I suppose. But it is
negative charge.
Yeah. I don't know. You'd have to do testing, but what I'm saying is, if the gold is the cathode, then it'll be attracted to the positive of that. So yeah, but maybe just not on its own.
So if someone can just send us in some red mercury, we'll get some experiments going.
Get some garlic out.
Yeah, man.
Okay, so we're nearly at the end. This ties into something that I find fascinating. I built one of these engines, or I modified an engine to run on plasma. And since we're talking about plasmas as sort of like the sun, then it really only requires three things. It requires a magnetic field, low pressure, and heat. So those three things, once you got them going, there's all the recipe for creating a plasma, pumping it up into that next state. And so this is a GEAT engine, GEAT reactor. And so you can do the same thing. It's basically got a spinning metal rod through the intake. As the piston comes down of the engine, it's creating a low pressure system. And it's obviously got the exhaust from the engine coming around the outside, so it's got the heat. And so you've got these three things, and you're actually creating a plasma. so these guys, if you see these engines where people have modified them, they run them on freaking coffee and just crazy stuff, but I built one of these and it worked wonderfully. So just those principles are at play in the higher atmosphere, and so this makes it super efficient, super awesome. And that's about all I've got on the electric flat earth presentation.
Don't stop. There's so much goodness. I do need a couple more minutes though to get ready a little bit of a live demonstration. I'd like to show you that correlates exactly to what you've been talking about. Sorry, I disagree.
There's a video.
Feminazi Slayer. Alchemy to me is both science, but there is some, I guess, magic or spiritual sides to the alchemy, or more than the science of it, essentially, or I guess more than electrical and magnetic energy.
Well, break apart the
when you don't understand technology, it's all magic.
Yeah, break apart the word alchemy as well. You got al and chemi.
Yeah,
it's if you say instead of al, it's L. It's electrochemistry.
You're taking the words out of my mouth, Lucas. I've been going around for years. It's electrochemistry, electric chemistry, and more so electrolysis chemistry is the science of alchemy.
Yeah, 100%.
And the other thing to say about that is, they do this all the time, right? All the time with information that is empowering, that is truth. They put it out there. They don't tell you, but they put it out in movies, and they put out this conspiracy theories that it's all evil and bad, and then you won't look at it. I mean, information should never be scary. If it's crap, you just discard it. I mean, this is the thing, because you read something about black magic doesn't mean you're going to turn into a black magician and start killing people. It's just
exactly, and it's also all intent too. But there is some extremely powerful and I guess more negative people used it for dark magic as opposed to light magic, like spell stuff and craft, you'd call it, a craft of alchemy within that you can summon things, but that goes more into the occultic, witch, Wiccan, and wizard sides of studies than what I do on the scientific side of alchemy and its history.
There is a highly sort of spiritual.
Home, throw some grapes in a microwave. Sorry. Apparently that makes
sense. So there's this. I don't know. There's a spiritual component to this as well when you start looking into polarity, especially, and just polarity isn't just polarity. When you look at it, really, it is actually a trinity, because you have one side and then the opposite side, and then you have to have a communication between them. So it's that overlap, that communication between them, that is really where the energy sort of comes from. And that's it starts to build a bigger picture of our cosmology as well, in a sense that a lot of these ideas about that middle ground, that middle way, and all those references, like the Buddha or the Jesus or whatever it is you want to follow, the middle path, the way between extremes starts to come into play, because you're not hyper focused on the sun or the moon side of yourself. You're sort of being that central pillar. And so there is a highly spiritual, connection that runs from this battery model into a lot of the religious texts, or just religious understandings, I guess, philosophies.
Well, we've been polarized, right? they've pretty much told us there's only positive and negative, right? But then
Okay,
Marco
don't go
Roden
anywhere.
came out
I
with his
need
quote,
5 minutes to get some things together.
let's put a
I'll be
third
right back.
winding on it. Oh, okay. Yeah, Marco Roden, I'm sure you've seen his work, put the third winding on it, right? Which is the ether. Right? And that's the problem with science today, is they don't acknowledge the ether. And so this is why there's so many, problems, and they need their equations that, are like 50 characters long and stuff to explain what they're talking about, because they're missing one of the main components and they won't admit that it exists, which is the energy source.
It's sort of funny because it's ether is somewhat misdescribed in a lot of ways, and I think when you look at my model, in a sense, should call it my model. It's just a battery model, but it's the ether in this sense is the electrolyte. But there could be other things.
Okay.
We know that there's an
so
exchange of
yeah.
We know there's a mental exchange that goes on as well in our world. It's not just pure physicalness. There's this polarity that seems to be occurring as well, which I found, and it helped me understand a lot of the symbolism in our world as well, which was this polarity between mind and matter. And if you change the letter of mind and you flip the M, you get wind. And then when you have material and you flip the M again, you get water. So you have this wind-water dynamic. And that's actually in the alchemical chart. You can see that's a Mercury type construct. But so you have this polarity, and so a lot of the when you see wings and anything to do with air, it's a reference to the mind, and anything to do with water and those motherly sort of stuff as well, you get a reference to this material. And there's no distinction because they're really both sides of the same coin, just like the sun and the moon are sort of separate, but they're working together. So the mind and the matter in us is again working together in complete harmony, or wants to be at least. And so when we're looking at some of the mythological and these type of constructs out there, I think it's important that people understand that whenever you see something to do with air and head and above, it's all to do with mind. Anything below, it's to do with matter, material, matrix, mother, and those sort of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's almost like manifestation, isn't it? We have to use the mind to bring things into the physical, right?
Yeah. And there's so much to be said about just really focusing on and honing in on polarity and some of the stuff that actually presents itself from that. And a lot of these stories that we hear in mythological tales and are actually to do with how the world operates. And in a sense, you have this world tree in the center, and this is this axis between the mind and the matter. Yeah. Well, Yggdrasil is actually 2 words. It's to do with Odin and horses. And horses play a role in a lot in mythology because they're the power behind the movement, and they're the hours. Yeah, horses and hours and Horus and all that link up.
I was just looking into like dark elves and dwarves and all this stuff, and dark elves are the origin of nightmares. And the horses, man, these bloody horses, they're all around the elves. What's the deal?
Well, yeah, horses is basically, in a sense, it's related to the Horai as well, which are the three fates, and they water the tree of they watered the world tree, and it's a reference, in a sense, to the 3 seasons and 3 geometric means. And so what they're sort of referencing there is the time itself. And so you have this idea that the world tree is like the still point, the unmovable within the moving. So it's the eye of the storm, if you like.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah. So
the
it's
pivot point or whatever, yeah.
time. It's the pivot point, and it's the timeless aspect of our world because it doesn't move. It's really not.
Doesn't move.
It's not in that cyclic.
Wow.
And so there you have this polarity
Yeah.
going on between the world of change and the world of timelessness. And so this is why you get these sort
Okay.
of references back in. Everything goes back into the world tree, and we all do as well. And what's actually occurred, because we've had a cosmology that's been messed with, is that the symbolism's been messed up. And it's basically because when you have a heliocentric viewpoint, the sun is at the center of the solar system, right? And everything is to do with the sun, and the sun becomes the immovable in a sense. But it wasn't actually the sun. It was originally just a invisible, in a sense, world tree that the sun and the moon moved around. And it was related to the stars or the
this
Polaris,
is almost like the
right?
axis they tell us about.
It's the axis that
They
the sun and the moon move around.
It's on 20.
So whenever you see a lot of that, when you see the mythologies in or Wikipedia and things like that, and they say this is the sun god, it's nearly always not a sun god. It's to do with the world axis. And you'll have Apollo, Zeus, Mercury, all these different ones that are actually in the center.
Apollo.
Yeah, Apollo. Yeah.
Apollo.
And Abraxas, which is the axis. And so a lot of the once you put that, Abraxas, yeah. So once you get that into sort of into your psyche of how that's operating, and it's almost the symbol for the sun is really like it's been exchanged for this, because it was originally that monad picture, which was a circle with a dot in the center. And they say it's the sun symbol, but it's actually a monad. But the central point is the world axis. And so all of these solar symbols that what they say they're solar symbols are actually not what they say. And so that's I'm just trying to help people when they start looking at mythology, how the construct has been played against us.
So it's like the realm with the pole in the middle of it. I mean, this is the thing, and that's what they do, right? With spelling, all they need to do is change, what they tell us the meaning of a word is or whatever, and we're gone, right? We have no idea what's going on because everything's symbols. And this is what we find all over the buildings, right? They used to be covered in this language of symbols, and they taught us to write in letters, right?
Yeah, well, they have a lot of symbols. It's amazing. Let me bring up some stuff here.
I mean, that's all they use. I mean, you just look at all the signs and that for, hazardous waste. Everything's a sign or a symbol. And of course, on computers now, we have all these little symbols that we call icons. Icon, it's an interesting word as well.
Hold on, I'll just have to.
Concrete mason.
So, is that showing?
All right. Well, are you sharing screen? Oh, hang on, I got to do it. There, now it is.
I'll just show you some of the encodings and stuff. Get out of this one. Why won't it let me move? So you see this in old maps and things like that, where they have this. This is the monad, pretty much, and it has the 32 rays around the 33rd point. But you can see here in the old maps that they're using this as a methodology for actually mapping. Really, really interesting. So some of the stuff that they say with these numbers are just complete rubbish. They're just trying to be, keep people down and hold them back from understanding what's going on. And especially when you're doing sort of navigation and things like that. So, 666 and people, get all upset about it and stuff. But, this is the minute divisions of the circle. And it's, it's related to the nautical mile and stuff. So that they're trying to, hide this information that's about our realm and how all these systems of measurement actually come into play, and they're actually built off music, which is really important, because when you're measuring out the cathedrals and things like that, if you have a system of harmonics that you can work off, then you know it's going to be musically aligned. And so this is 27 mile, 27 league, 20, and you will see that they have these harmonics. And you can see this number here is related to the precession of the equinox and things like that. But they're actually just harmonics of number.
And they're all 9 numbers too.
Well, you can see that some of these numbers are actually
the God number, right?
Yeah, it's sort of the infinite. It's the last one. It's a serpent as well. So you can see that some of these numbers are actually inbuilt into our hand as well. So the mathematics of the hand shows some of this, these frequencies 4, 3, 2, and 8. Yeah, and that's just a different way of calculating your hand, but just. You'll see a number of.
One thing that they've really got us with. All they teach us is I call it accounting mathematics. Like literally, it's just how to do maths for money, right? That's all they teach you at school. They don't teach you any of this interesting stuff.
Oh no, there's a whole world out there of really really interesting mathematics, and it's really.
System,
I
was just going to say, how do you see it? I see it as like 10. See, we're taught that 10 is like the end of the first, group of 10, where it's actually the first of the next set, isn't it? Like 0 is the first number. So 0 to 9 are the first 10 numbers. And then 10 is clearly it's 1, right? 1 and 0, which goes up to 19, which equals 10. When we go to 2. So
you go 0 to 9, that's 10 digits. Well. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, you can do it a number of different ways.
Yeah. But they teach us 1 to 10. Yeah.
And then there's something really interesting that happens with triangular numbers and those sort of things. And you can see there's the 364-day calendar sort of built into triangular numbers, which is really fascinating as well. I'm actually building an app and hopefully it'll be released soon that's going to have a conversion between the 364-day calendar and the 365-day calendar. And it'll have a clock and stuff on it.
So what's the 13th month? Is that going to be?
I'm just having it as counting, isn't it? Yeah, it actually where I started the start of the year for this on the app will start at the 1st of April, and I did it there because it actually the way it divides the sky, and it will only have one division of one of the star signs, and that will be it'll split basically Scorpio into 2. But if I had it in different spot, it wouldn't split the sky properly. So
okay.
So
you could always add like Lucember as a new month.
Yeah, no, I'm not adding my own month. I just added a numbers. And so shit, it's a bit. That's it. But
we could all worship you for a month every year.
No thanks. So this one is an interesting one if you want to get back to the horses and that. And your anagram for horses is heroes, and then you take the H off it, you get eros, which is love and desire. And so there's a lot to go into with horse symbology.
Mary's ocean, isn't it? Mary's ocean in French, is it?
Yeah, Marina is to do with the oceans, and Mary.
Marina.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
and backwards, it's or you can make Mara is an anagram for Rama, and so that you're sort of making the Hindu god then, so it all ties in. And this is Kama or Kama, related to the Buddha's mother. But it's a deep rabbit hole that I'm doing a lot of research on.
Well, even when they talk about the apocalypse in the Bible, they mention horses, don't they? Is it the horses of the apocalypse or something? Is that right? No, horses. The 4 horsemen. That's it.
Yep. Well, they're the seasons, because you take horse is hora in Spanish, and it means hours. So it's a designation for time. Yeah, which is Horus, which relates back to Jupiter and all those sort of characters which are part of this winged god. But what you find is that they're just relating things to time, and so as well as power, like horsepower. And so when you see the chariots pulling the sun and the moon, well, that's the hours and power behind things, and it actually stands for a type of law that's embedded into it as well, a type of logos, a divine timing. So there's a lot to it, but anyway, it's just for people to go down that rabbit hole if they feel they want to.
This looks very Tower of Babel, doesn't it? Like there was this language, but it wasn't like language like we think of language. It wasn't like letters and spelling and all this. It was like an understanding of symbols and symbolism, all this. Like it's like, like the Facebook symbol, the blue, a white F in a blue square does not mean Facebook. It means billion things, right? Somewhere you can talk when you can post it. So that's what language was, where we've been taught that a word is just, we're looking at, we're like infants. We look at a word like walk, that means to move your legs. And that's all it means, right? Like, but their symbols like encode so much information and I think this is what the buildings were. You could stand outside a building and read it, I think, and it would tell you what was going on, what the building did and all this kind of stuff. And
wow, and then, it's really interesting, because that's what gets me about the old world buildings. They have nothing on them. No advertising, anything.
No, they've all been stripped.
Yeah, okay.
A facade has been put on.
The further back you go, the more they've got. But it's all like proper. Like it's all the statues and the facading and all that. Yeah.
I'll quickly show you where that horse symbolism actually comes from and how it relates to the zodiac. Just bring up that slide. We'll quickly go through this. So it actually comes from the threshing floor. So this is an old farming practice, and it's basically where they would get the wheat from the harvest, and they'd bring it onto the floor, and they'd walk an animal around in a circle. And there'd usually be a central pillar of that circle that would be tied to the animals to keep them going in a circle. Sometimes they'd have a sled or something, and what it would do would actually crush the grain up or crush the stalks up and release the grain onto the ground. So then you could collect it and put it in a mill. So this movement of animals walking around in a circle is what the zodiac is actually based off, because zodiac is zoo dial. It's a animal circle. It's actually it's 2 words, and so this place was usually found high up where you'd have more wind, so you could actually get rid of the chaff from the wheat. And in this central pillar in the center of it became like a sundial, right? And it's also a symbol for our world, like I was showing with the monad. And so it started to tell the time. It was known as the gnomon, which means knowing one. So the animals acted like the shadow of a sundial, right? So they were actually the ones moving everything around. They were moving the seasons. So you see the analogy that's sort of taking place between the movement of the heavens and the idea of the ox or the horse. And so Polaris is this central point that they're moving around. And you can see that horse and hours, you take out the vowels, and you'll get hours, you'll get Horai and all the rest of it. So the Horai were goddesses of the seasons and natural portions of time. So you're getting this whole story that starts to come out of it from this understanding here.
It makes me think of all the animals that were walking in circles recently. That's got anything to do with
I don't know.
changing of ages. I don't know.
So
maybe they just wanted some wheat to eat.
I don't know. Anyway, just tell me to stop whenever, because I can just keep going.
Yes.
No, you're good. You keep going.
Okay. I've got to deliver meals. I've got to deliver meals soon, so I'll have to nick off in a bit. But so this central pillar is sometimes called the omphalos stone, and this, relates to your, what they call them, obelisks and things like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. I thought you were talking about someone else. The phallus stone.
Yeah. Well, it's
Sorry,
it's a joining of two. Because you're joining the heaven and the earth, right, with that omphalos. And so you're joining the masculine and the feminine together, and that's where you get hermaphroditic, right? You get the two polarities coming together. And how are the polarities created? They're created out of the vesica. And it's this vesica that starts to create the net.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is the net that sits over the omphalos stone.
And most of the omphalos stones or the obelisks are literally sitting on top of a Vesica Pisces symbol.
Yes.
And so everyone thinks it's all about sex, but clearly, again, there's more going on there, right? It's not just about trying to symbolize a
No.
Bits and a woman's bits.
No. It's symbolizing. It's a creation story, because this is how you can show something as created via geometry. So, and these and the ratios that come out of the Vesica Pisces are very, very special, and they show something very interesting, is that they are like pi. They are transcendental, which means that they go on forever, like the square root of 3, square root of 2, and those sort of things. These ratios are extremely important. And so that's what comes out of, that is what is born out of the Vesica Pisces, right? Now, if you take the Vesica Pisces further, you'll create the seed of life and then the flower of life. This is actually the tree of life, but they call it the flower of life. And you'll notice that 37, there's 37 points all up. So to come to a full, the reason why this is a special one is because it actually has, if you take this center point out, you have 36, and that means there's a full completion, because 360 degrees, right? And then you have the Trinity also played in part of this, but the central point. Now, out of this 37, you're going to start to get your triple digits. But this is what's built out of a lot of the temples and things that they're building off are actually built on 37, the number 37, and harmonics of it. So it's a really important number. This is where all you get all your
37 has, or is it's just what's come out when they've been studying that shape, pretty much, isn't it?
Oh, there's more to it.
So
37 is just one
number.
That's just one point of it. That's just one number that's coming out of this. There's lots more within it. You'll also get this Rubik's Cube type setup where it's 27 total cubes. The 216, so that nautical miles and those sort of things start to play a role in it. So you're starting to see that the temples that they're building is based on this flower of life geometry. we'll skip that for now, just to say that all these gods are basically talking about this. They come down in gematria as the same thing. Same number, 27 days of the moon. So it's those sort of things. You get in the 666 again, you get 888, which is the name of Jesus in Greek gematria, 888. And this is how we're getting to the relationship between this flower of life and music, which is really extremely important to how they were building the buildings. And 888 is the string ratio of the whole tone. So we're starting to see that how they're actually encoding these names is part of a musical system and a mathematical system.
Right, it's the geometry of creation and the universe, and that they've then manipulated like the 666. So these key, also like the Star of David being like the 2D of the tetrahedron and whatnot, and that they make people then believe that they're evil or it's dark or it's this just false evil idol, I guess, essentially, and to stay away from ever investigating the actual purpose of these maths, these geometries, what sacred geometry really is, what the science of alchemy really is. And it's just fascinating. The more you look into it, the more you realize that it's all been done before. There's the great purpose and knowledge in these leftover ancient temples and architectures, and we're just touching the tip of it, really.
And the other thing that's important is that they had within the encodings of mathematics and things, they had a law system as well, because the central pillar was like equivalent to law as well. So they really had a firm grasp of sort of this idea of logos and this divine law and those sort of things. And it's definitely not what we're sort of told that, like the past was that they didn't understand, or just people would do anything. But no, these people seem to have an understanding of high mathematics and how they relate to it, it's just very interesting. There's lots more information, in regards to the gematria of some of the names that they're putting out. So Hermes, the lyre, Zeus, and these are actually showing these geometric means and harmonic means. Yeah, they're showing ratios in the stories. So
the encoded knowledge.
And I think it was pretty well known, but it's just sort of lost to us in a sense, because the horses, or the three hori, are actually related to the geometric mean, the harmonic mean, and the arithmetic mean. And so you have those three means, which is actually related to number, music, and geometry. And then you have a fourth one, which builds a quadrivium, which is sort of based on those three coming together, Trinity of Trinities type stuff. So there's more to be encoded, and this is where you get a lot of the ideas for the sea above us, having this ocean above our heads. It's actually to do with the music, in a sense. Things come from the sea. The root note is C, and so you have the central pillar of this musical scale is the F sharp, and that builds a tritone. And so the tritone is a triton, and that's what triton comes from. These images are actually talking about musical sort of stuff as well, and it's really poetic. It's really poetic in how they're doing it.
And it gives way more purpose and meaning behind the actual sacred geometry, and what made this information so sacred and important is that it's actually the coding of the universe and how energies flow, how matter takes shape, and how elements and life interact with each other.
Exactly. So whenever you're seeing something, and that's what the architecture shows you, whenever you see something, it's reminding you of some of these powers that are at play, these concepts that are at play, and constantly reminded of music, constantly reminded of these things, and just it really starts to come alive, and what they're trying to convey is much more beautiful than what we've been told. And what our world shows us is stupid friggin' ads and mind-numbing stuff, compared to they're pointing to geometry and music and things like that.
Right.
It's completely different.
And how much they've manipulated
Oneness, yeah.
our current music and whatnot against us, as well as information and symbols. Earlier, while I was getting ready a little bit there, shout out Mind's Eye. Thanks.
Oh, thank you,
$5
Mind's Eye.
super chat.
Thank you.
The symbols have so many more meanings, right, than just a letter. And you have to take in that old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And basically one symbol can have 1,000 different meanings and pieces of information attached to it. And I quickly just want to put this guy up, the 3 principles of alchemy. Before you have to run off, Lucas, I gotta go over that with you quickly. So I'll let you get back to what you're.
No, I can shut this down. I'll let you go, mate. Let's have a look at.
All right then.
What's happening
here? So there's the chemical laws, I believe these 3 are called, and the first one being the 3 principles: the sulfur, the salt, and the mercury. And actually, do you mind? Are you able to pull back the one slide that you had of the 3 of those again?
Yeah, I'll find it. Give me a sec.
Okay. And so I see these symbols being the 3 principles of electrolysis and monoatomics here: the sulfur, the salt, and mercury. And the sulfur is the cathode, and the mercury is the anode, where the salt water there, or the salts here in the middle, is actually in salt water. And that the sulfur being the cathode, that's your negative connection going in, and the mercury being the anode, it being the positive. And then that sulfur is the triangle up, and it's on the cathode side, you have gas being released that goes up. The cathode turns the water into hydrogen. The hydrogen comes up off of the cathode, and it's going up off of the reaction. And then essentially plasma, fire, flame, it also goes up out of the reaction. And on the anode side, the mercury, you have the decay, breaking off chunks of the solid metal, breaking down, going into the reaction, and then also dissolving into the liquid, which are the 2 heavier states of matter. And what you then connect into the 4 elements, fire being a triangle up. Well, fire is plasma, and a type of plasma, and we now know that plasma is the 4th state of matter. Air, it's also going up, but has a little line through it, so it's not as I guess light or intense as plasma. It's 1 state of matter down, but it's still a gas, and air is a gas. That's your 3rd state of matter. water, triangle down. That's a liquid. That's the second state of matter, and it goes down from the center. Like we float in water and things dissolve down into water and it's below us. And then the final one being earth, the triangle down with the line at the very bottom. And while solid is denser than liquid, it's the very, very base state of the elements. So it's your four states of matter. And then it says plus the elements. Well, plus the elements means, well, the elements, which is the periodic table of elements. And every single element has its own alchemical symbol, and these symbols are ancient. This is nothing new. I think the actual pictographic language of alchemy is the oldest, or at least one of the oldest written languages throughout all of ancient societies and civilizations, and it's still used within the occults and the secret societies of today as a language, and they understand those symbols a lot more. And it seems that that's why they got rid of teaching and the understanding of science of alchemy, because there's just so much more to it than just some woo-woo guys trying to discover chemistry, but it was nothing. Oh, there we go. Right. Oh, yeah, so I love this, looking at it again.
So this chart's a little different to that one that you showed, and it's it comes from the prima materia, so the first material, and then it goes into fixed and volatile states. And so they class the air and fire under these, and then the earth and water as fixed. Interesting, though, I would put the niter on this side and the salt on that side, but either way. The salt, the mercury, and sulfur, in this one, the mercury is between water and air, which is sort of suitable to its nature, as it's being in this liquid or air state. Very easily it moves between. And in this sort of sense, you see there's 3 T's here, there's 3 crosses. It's an interesting little symbology going on in between there as well. But the salt, and in this case, I think it's more to do with water than it is actually, because myrrh and curry is, as we explained before, myrrh is related to water and curry is to mix. So it's a water mix. That's what mercury means.
Oh, it's curry.
Right. So in this, and right, symbols have 1,000 different meanings. So now in this bottom one, the way it's positioned, and I see it, it's like your salt is your solid, your mercury is your liquid, and your sulfur is the gas, like a sulfuric gas going up. So that's the representation of them within that, within the ocean, within the water, the electrolysis.
I'll show you this other chart. I'll get rid of that. That I've been working on, and it's based on 3 trinities, and it's I'll share it anyway. It's just a bit of fun.
Absolutely. Right, and it's like I'm saying, just because, well, the symbols, everything can have like many different meanings. So it's like, just because I'm saying that they represent this in this situation doesn't mean that they also represent every other meaning that people associate with them or have deciphered out of it.
Oh, exactly. So this is to do with, this is me just attempting to correlate the 3, or the trinity that they talk about, and there's actually a trinity of trinities. So one of the trinities is based on time, and you'll have a past, present, and future. All right, that's your first trinity. The second trinity is space, and that's to do with height, width, and length. And then you'll have the third one, which is material, and this is to do with solid, liquid, and gas. Now, what's interesting about this is that fire isn't included into it. So it sort of got me thinking, is fire more of a chemical reaction of these materials rather than an element unto itself? But yeah,
So I'll throw in one possibility in that is that I see space as plasma essentially too. So if it's like the fire's not in there, if it's does represent plasma and you have space outside, it's like that could be the plasma area. But just a thought.
and it's just this is
just
a type
spitballing
of
too, though,
calendar
right?
as well.
I'm just spitballing things, so it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I could be completely off as well. So
this is based on a type of calendar that's a 9-month calendar. So yeah, would be interesting to apply it to a seasonal thing as well. So it's got the spring, summer, and winter, and you've got the 3 hori, which are the geometric, harmonic, which is number in time. Geometric is number in space, and then arithmetic is number in series. So I just thought I'd put that in there for fun.
Does that correlate to the Does that correlate to the number groups of Marco Rodin? You know how he does, like, what is it, 1, 1, 4, 8, 3, 6, 9, and 2. The other one is.
Does he do that? Does he do that?
Would you mind sending me this? So do you have
he splits
somewhere
3, and that's his
download all of your files from, Lucas?
That's his grid.
Yeah, I can send you stuff for sure.
I appreciate it. I'm pulling lots out of it and love
have you seen the Marco
Rodin?
Yes. I remember the other guy, Daniel.
Daniel Nunes.
Yeah.
The Nunes is
yeah.
files. Yeah. Great work.
I told him to do 12 coils instead of 11. I don't know why he does 11.
I think I'm pretty sure Matthew Rife does 12 in his star coils, and we're gonna have him on tomorrow. Coincidentally, a couple more quick things I wanted to show is just like these are some basic symbols of most used array element symbols in alchemy, and how much these look like physics symbols or electrician symbols, electrical symbols, and it's because they actually are. And the sun there, gold, the big dot and the outside, that's the exact same as electricians use for the right-hand rule and how electromagnetic field forms and moves and acts. And gold is the energy, the sun is the energy coming into our system, and has a lot of electric properties in gold itself.
I didn't know that was the symbol for the right-hand rule, and I was just saying before that actually is the monad, so it's actually a symbol for the realm, where that point is the central pillar. So that's where you would start the movement. That's cool.
It means so many things at the same time. And one last part, the planets and the metals at the bottom. And you have the gold, the sun in the middle here. Sorry, I got to take down the comment. And then there's 3 to the left, 3 to the right. So in 7. So essentially I see it as like 20, or the moon cycle, or like the cycle of like the heavenly bodies, and where the object is located on a essentially on the graph, or like where we are from it ourselves. So it's like your standard chart, right? You have like your X and your Y areas, and then that where we are in the position to where the moon is, the sun is, Venus, Mars, all of them. And so this is like the actual scientific measurements of astrology, and how they actually calculated the energies or the positions of these 4 there's certain equations. And on the far left you have the moon being silver, and with my own experiments and making monoatomic silver out of silver, when I ran the process to pure silver anode and cathode for a full month, I noticed, and it just happened to also be during a supermoon event that month, I noticed that as we got closer to the full moon, it was producing more and more volume of this monoatomic silver within the electrolysis area off the anode. And then when the full moon hit and it was a supermoon, the entire bucket filled that night of monoatomic silver like I'd never seen before, and I harvested the heck out of it, and that's like kept producing a lot, like the max that it would normally coming out of a full moon, so like a decent amount, but then kept going down all the way to the point when the moon was waxed and waning that it was almost producing nothing at all. And,
wow.
I've since tested it live a couple times on science streams with Jeremy Reese on the Alien Scientist channel. There's one we did the live during I think it was the last major lunar eclipse, and I theorized that since it was like for an eclipse to happen, it has to be a full moon, so that it would be producing a lot of monoatomic silver leading up to the day of the eclipse, and then it would stop during the eclipse and not produce any, and then it would like resume normally afterwards. And I did one test and stream of it the night before where it was producing a whole bunch. Then I stopped it, and then I started it again right as the eclipse started on this live stream, and it literally produced nothing for the entire stream of the eclipse, and then it started producing right at the end of the eclipse, and I left it running and showed the next day that it did even more.
That's really interesting.
Right? So it's like,
there you go.
They call
it's a correspondence.
Exactly, like physical correspondence of the moon being silver. And then also the mixtures of monoatomics that I make that essentially Keshi calls GANs, or David Hudson calls ORMUS, but they're plasma state matter essentially, and that Jupiter is, which one is Jupiter again? Sorry, tin. So aluminum, how much the different colors of this fluffy stuff in the reaction actually look like the planet Jupiter through the microscope or the telescope. Lead and Saturn very similar, but lead is so, I only messed with it once in this process and it almost killed me. Don't ever use lead if you're doing electrolysis. Lead will make you dead. It was absolutely nuts. It's straight poison. Sorry.
I'm gonna have to bail, guys, because I have to deliver these meals.
Yes. Glad we got that in.
Yes, we can't leave people hungry. Yeah. Well, we're going at 3 hours anyway, so
a few more of these.
Yeah, I'm happy to hang out with you guys. It's good fun.
Good. Yeah. And of course, everyone, Lucas does have a channel, LC King, on YouTube, so go check him out, give him a subscribe, like, kind of good stuff. And we'll get you back on a show soon.
That'd be great. Thanks, guys.
Thank
great
you.
talking to you.
Awesome.
Absolutely epic work.
Cheers, Lucas.
Thanks.
That's
We'll talk to you soon, mate. See ya. All right, burn eye. So there we go. We're going on 2 hours. So thank you everyone in chat, and thank you for the people who gave us some donations before. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the support.
And 350 of you see us. Oh my gosh.
Decent amount, eh?
So yeah, man. I think they're all here for Lucas, so they're all going to start dropping off.
Yeah, that was absolutely epic and amazing. And I'm going to be rewatching this stream a couple times just to absorb all of it. But I've added another camera
course,
and started organizing all of the different crazy Bernie science lab alchemy things to start doing more alchemy streams and lessons and info on it all.
And if you go across to Lucas's channel, the link is below in the description. He does videos that explain his theory and research a bit more. So definitely go and check that out. And so I'm gonna have to jump off too soon. Bern, what are you up to? You look like you're getting ready for something.
Okay, I just quickly would like to show this other one that I think, there we go. The black there, that straight black. I used neodymium and iron in that one, so I think I might have actually successfully made some ferrofluid out of it. I'm gonna do some tests on that and see what came of it. And yeah, it's absolutely an epic stream, and hopefully the first of many.
Yeah. So maybe we can go into that, and on the next stream, maybe we can show some of your stuff and sort of how you've been seeing the same kind of reactions that Lucas was talking about, you know, with your stuff and your full moon alchemy and all this kind of stuff.
100%.
Beakers. Yeah. Beakers. Look at that stack of beakers in the background. This is clearly a mad scientist's laboratory.
Right, and I got to show one thing super quick, and it's that in a lot of them, I will have essentially like these Magrav coils, which are triple solenoid coils within coils, and these triple solenoids, what Keshi calls pain pens, but they're essentially capacitors, which in real electric engineering, these are energy creating and like using and functioning devices, and that the way I've wired a lot of these sealed jars, there's actually electrical differentials, potentials, and charges being created and distributed running through all of the different wires. So it's like I've created active sealed anode cathode electrolysis reactions and functioning technology devices. So
maybe we'll have to do another build video and show everyone how to make their own electrical magical wand out of
there will be many
and copper.
Many more
Crystals and copper. That's a good name for a band. If you're out there and you're about to start a band, I think you should call it Crystals and Copper.
I like that. Yeah. But yeah, point being, I've got a stream set up coming up with Esoteric Gold, Mike from Utah, another fellow alchemist, called Adept Alchemy 101, and I will be going deep into all of this and explaining it, and we can definitely do a future episode of how to do with you, good Campbell.
Awesome. All right. Well, there you go, guys. Thank you all for spending some time with us. Hope you enjoyed that. You'll find links for Lucas's channel and Bernie's channel below, so do go across and subscribe. And of course, if you're on Bernie's channel, come across to my channel and subscribe, because I need about 500 more people and I will be at 75 grand. Though it's been sitting very still for a long time. So
and I honest to God saw you at cross 75K one day like 3 weeks ago, and then they just brought you back down again. It's ridiculous.
And then they just go and delete subs. It's great fun. I love fighting YouTube. It's so much. Well, it's not really.
And
F YouTube. Anyway, we love you. If you're watching, you're amazing. And thank you for spending some time with us. And we shall catch you all on the next upload on a screen near you. Ta-ta.
That's awesome.